Welcome back to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It's time for the view from the opposition. Newcastle travel to the South Coast to play Brighton this weekend. And it's a pleasure to be joined by podcaster Tom Phillips, a familiar face of the podcast, and he's going to give the insight into all things Brighton. Tom, welcome back. How are you keeping you well?
Very well, thank you. How are you guys doing?
Well, I'd be better if we weren't facing Brighton. I'm going to be brutally honest with you. I absolutely dread this fixture. So, I could be better. That aside, I'm doing all right. This is just a fixture in which history shows you Newcastle United do not have a good time against Brighton. I was looking at the stats prior to coming on and recording. Brighton haven't lost in 8 Premier League home games against Newcastle United. Newcastle United have the lowest win rate of 13% against Brighton. That's when they face a side more than 3 or more times in the Premier League. Not looking forward to it at all. I imagine you are looking forward to it.
Do you know it's a funny one because I do look forward to the Newcastle game because it's always a good match. Even from a neutral perspective, it's always an entertaining end-to-end match. You're not going to get bored over 90 minutes for sure. But there's just something about this Brighton team this season where the consistency is non-existent in terms of a good winning run and getting the positive results as we've seen in recent weeks. Well, since the start of the season, really, we just haven't hit the ground running as much as we hoped for, as much after carrying all the positives from last season, despite the heavy burdens of the injury list.
Well, you give me some hope then, a little bit anyway. But they are neck and neck in the table, 12th versus 11th, 9 points apiece. Brighton unbeaten in 4, but it is their first home game in 3. So is there kind of a want to be back at home? Or are you guys looking forward to being back at the Amex?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we've been on the run for so long, particularly when we've had, we had the high of Chelsea, we had the standard, dare I say it, of the Barnsley match in the Carabao Cup, and then we just had this banana skin moment at Wolves. We just didn't seem to, that nothing was going our way in that match, and that was always. I sound cocky when I say this, but it was almost a guaranteed 3 points for us. And I think that was probably the problem why we ended up drawing with them, because we always seem to just get that result at Molineux. We've always had a good run at Molineux historically anyway. So for us to come away with just a point, dropping 2 points as well, it's bitterly disappointing, really. We really should have won it, and by half time, really, but we just didn't. And that's something that Hertzler has to try and sort out quickly, I think, because otherwise we're just going to lose any sort of momentum that we had or hoped for this start of the season.
And what is the aim, do you think, of Brighton this campaign? It was a 9th place finish, wasn't it, last season? What is the aim? What is the hope? And what does that kind of tell you about this Saturday in terms of, if it is European qualification? Are they trying to go neck and neck with Newcastle? Or are they trying to make the Amex that fortress to make sure they can get into Europe for next season? So can you just share some insight on that?
Yeah, sure. So I think it was best summarized by Tony Bloom. He'd done a podcast interview, it was covered in The Athletic, and it was a really good in-depth conversation from a chairman in the Premier League, which is very rare these days, shall we say, but it was very insightful. That we've always wanted to be in a conversation for Europe, and I think that's something that that's always something that we wanted to get involved in no matter what. So I think top 10 is the absolute minimum that is to be expected, but we want to be in the conversation for Europe. We will be fighting for either Europa League or Europa Conference League spot, and I think that was emphasized at the end of last season as well. We had one of the worst injury runs in the Premier League. I think only Tottenham had a worse injury run than us, and we but despite that, and despite the makeshift formations of our squad, we were getting results and we were getting good runs in, and there was a lot of positivity and a lot of overwhelming feeling that we could push on, we could get another week in there, another season in Europe. And I think that was also added with a touch of emotion with everything that Crystal Palace have done. They got their cup and they got their Community Shield, and now they're in the Conference League at the moment. And I think that's something we want to get back into, because now that our main rival is in that conversation again with a trophy that they love to remind us every week about, it's just something that we just got to hold on to, and just to make sure that, it's a bit of bragging rights, but also as well, it's to show that, we are far more capable than what we're showing at the moment, which has been why I think some corners of the fan base has been very frustrated with what they've seen so far this season.
And I guess that would lead into Saturday and trying to take advantage of Newcastle's average form on the road. I mean, they've drawn their first 3 0-0, haven't scored in their last 4, and goals have been hard to come by across the start of this season. So if you are looking to get into for next season, I imagine, you'll be looking at Newcastle and saying, yeah, okay, they've got some good players, but on the road, nothing special. We're at home, we should be going out here and trying to get all 3 points.
Yeah, but there's just something about Brighton and Hove Albion where teams like that come to the Amex, or even if we go to your place and you have those runs that the opponent will see as a bad run from their fans' perspective, we always seem to be that team that ends it. It's almost become a little bit of a meme for us fans, where we just be like, oh, good, like Newcastle have got a really bad away form. You know what that means? It's going to be a 1-0 win, last minute header in from your new target man, which will do wonders for my fantasy team. But unfortunately, it just feels like there's just the degree of pessimism, but as well as that, there is the optimism in the club, within the fan base. And again, there is something about this fixture particularly. I don't know whether it's because of that, the title fight season in the Championship, and both of us getting promoted, and then it's just carrying on from there. But it's always been entertaining, and I am relishing it, because it's something that we need to get. We got that huge win at Stamford Bridge a few weeks back, fantastic. Then the following week we bottled it against Wolves, which I can't help but feel we're going to look back at that match against Wolves and the Tottenham match the last time we were at home and wonder, these were the ones that really hampered our season so early on. I know that's like we're only 7 games in, but we know how different just one result can be. I mean, for yourselves, you got Champions League on the last day of the season. I think you were level on points, I believe. So every point matters, especially in the race for Europe when there's potentially 7-8 spots available. We don't want to be that team that finishes 9th again and just misses out just because of mistakes that we have done.
Well, you look back to the last time Newcastle were at the Amex, I think it was about 12,000 penalties, and we got one in the back of the net, and it was probably the last good thing Alexander Isak did, and it was a crucial point in the end. But yes, they haven't got the best of records at the Amex, but I always say, history is there to be rewritten. I think I say it to you every single time we discuss Newcastle travelling down the South Coast, and still they haven't managed to rewrite history, but there's always a chance. Good old 3 o'clock kickoff on a Saturday as well, which is nice to see. Let's get into the potential teams then. And I want to talk to you about Dan Burn, because he's been absolutely superb since he moved from Brighton to Newcastle. There is a pretty strong chance, that he will be left back on Saturday. And as good as he is, as good as he's been, he's not a left back. He's been superb the last season and a bit as centre back. No one's doubting that. But I think he's probably the weak link. Is that where you think Brighton will target?
I think so, especially when you've got Minte, who has just come leaps and bounds. I think when I think everyone in the fan base would say, like, if they're clutching on one positivity, it would be Minte, because he's just been fantastic from the outset this season. He's been the standout performer, and him on the right is lethal, and he's made some well-established left backs look silly so far this season. So I think, he will be looking forward to a challenge against, Big Dan Burn, and I think someone like him, he'll still put in a good shift in. Like you say, left back isn't his strongest position, as we know, but he has put in some surprising shifts in for us when he was in that makeshift left wing back role that Graham Potter established during his time, and then when he moved to you guys, he's put in a few good shifts in against very surprising opponents. I think I remember one couple of years back against Salah, and he gave Salah a very rare quiet shift that time. And I think it's someone you can't underestimate, but definitely would be somewhere we would target for sure. We always favour going on the right anyway, just so that we can almost overload, and then we play in the middle and then boot it over to Matoma so that we could do some sort of like a surprise attack from the left wing, just so that we could stop any pressure coming in. Because Matoma at the moment, he's double, triple marks at the moment, which is why he's having such a quiet season so far, because now clubs are getting wind of our threats on the left. But what that's happened is that it's allowed Minter to have almost free reign, which is almost like a win-win for us, really, because plan A is not working, but we've got plan B in Minte.
If only Newcastle United had a right winger of that quality, yeah. Good old PSO. I know, I'm sure Anthony Elanga will come good. He has to, because I've backed him more than anybody, and I'm going to look a bit daft if he doesn't. Maybe this is his game to show what he's worth. But yeah, that's going to be a very interesting battle. And I say, Burn is the weak link. It's not like I expect him to have a bad game, but I think if you're targeting one area of the pitch, that's probably where you're going to target. But you are right. He showed how good he can be in that position. He's kept Saka quiet at times, Salah, as you mentioned, so he can do it. And no doubt, well, fingers crossed from our point of view, he does it again on Saturday. You mentioned there Mitoma alongside Veltman as well. Are we a couple of doubts there potentially? Do we expect Veltman and Mitoma to be fit?
Part of me thinks that I think they could well be fit. Hertz is quite cautious when it comes to players. If you're on your fantasy teams at the moment, you see the yellow mark over Mitoma, then my advice is ease it with caution. Wait until what Hertzler says. If it's no news, it's good news. But if there is a comment about Mitoma that is longer than a sentence, then he's in the treatment room. So I think that's something that will be a question mark. Veltman, however, is someone that I would expect to be on the bench. I think he is someone who is going to be more of a feature in the 60th, 70th minute, just to wind down the clock, wind up the wingers if we're in that winning position. I wouldn't see him starting. I think personally, I want Kalioglu starting on the right and De Kuyper on the left. They're younger, fitter, and I don't want to say better, but I think technically they suit Hertz's style of play far more. And Veltman's coming up to mid-30s now, sadly. I love him because he's an absolute wind-up merchant. He knows the dark arts very, very well, and you need someone like that. I mean, I think many people will remember him, what he did to get Declan Rice sent off last season, which was both genius and hilarious. So you need that little bit of gamesmanship in the game for you to get these results when you're playing in such a competitive league in the Premier League that anyway. But I think if we use him for 90 minutes, he's going to be knackered for the next 2 weeks. So we need to use him wisely, effectively, and efficiently. So he'll be on the bench. He'll definitely come on as a sub if we're in a winning position after the hour mark. But I can't see him starting this weekend.
And talk to us about Danny Welbeck, a man who just seems to be getting better with age. I love the fact that he's still banging in the goals for Brighton.
He like you say, he's aged like fine wine, hasn't he? He had his, I think it was his best season in the Premier League in terms of goals. Like, he got double figures. He's been an answer to us for what was supposedly only going to be a 2-year fix, but he was such a good asset for us in the dressing room. He's just extended it. Then there's been conversations. I know some people have thrown him in their hat to return back to United, but he's always been committed to us. He's been such a great role model for the youngsters up and coming. I mean, there have been so many times where Minte last season, for instance, whenever he's made that wrong call, that wrong decision, I could tell you the first person who's given him an absolute hairdryer treatment is Danny Welbeck. I don't know whether or not that's just the Fergie effect he's had instilled in him from his younger days, but you can see that when he's so used to that standard, when he was at United, when he was at Arsenal. I mean, people forget about his little blip at Watford, but when you're playing for those two clubs in the Champions League regularly, he wants those players to aspire to that level, to those heights, and he leads from the front. He sets the example so well, and you saw that against Chelsea. I don't know what it is with him. He loves playing Chelsea. He loves scoring against them, and he loves setting up against Chelsea. He just seems to be like almost like the boogeyman for them. And I think for me that Danny Welbeck's been such a fantastic asset for us. It's just so frustrating that the fountain of youth just doesn't exist, because I would throw him in there back to when he's 25 again, so that he could just bang it in for us for another 10 more years. But sadly, we're not in that situation. But we do have two Greeks who I hope will be as effective as Zeus would be, because I'm liking them. They're exciting me at the moment.
Well, it's funny. I never really rated Danny Welbeck when he was younger. It's just since he's gone to Brighton, I've gone, do you know what? I wouldn't even mind him filling a gap in Newcastle's squad, because he's banging the goals in. He's a great influence in the dressing room. And I think you need that kind of experience, as you mentioned there, when it comes to the younger players. Just give us a little bit of insight into how you think Brighton will approach this game tactically. Are they going to try and control it? Are they going to try and invite Newcastle on? How is it going to go?
We've got at home, we tend to control. So we want to control the match. We'll tend to be doing a lot of passing around the back. Van Hecker and Dunk just passing it to one another, and then going out wide, see if there is that half space. We always like to look for that killer pass down the middle. And then all of a sudden in the final third, it's going to be a little bit of ticky-tacky football, and then a chance for one of the wingers. But we will definitely be controlling the match possession-wise if the game allows it. If not, then we could be in a degree of trouble. We tend to go then sit back, invite the danger, and then hit on the counter. But we like to be quite efficient in terms of being off the ball. So we try to hold it back a little bit, invite the danger, and then we tend to press a lot higher up than what we would do away from home. I think that's why it worked so well at Chelsea, just because Chelsea just didn't have an answer. They just couldn't find a way around us in the very narrow setup that we had in our final thirds. I think that's when they were getting more and more frustrated, and we could see those weaknesses, and we were like pressing those passing channels, not the man per se, but those channels. Because if you ever watch the extended highlights, Chelsea just couldn't string a pass together, and that wasn't down to them being sloppy. It was just down to us just inviting the press and forcing them into a channel where we always knew that someone like Danny Welbeck or Gomez or Hinchelwood would just be, and all of a sudden we'll start a counter attack. At home, however, it will very much be we're the hosts, we get first dibs, and this is the way we play, and you sit back and we frustrate you. So I think that's going to be the case again. But like I said, like I said before, this game is such an interesting one. It's always end to end, and I can see your main midfield three being very disciplined in that. I mean, I think I would argue so much to say I think you've got the best three midfield in the league, just because of how well those three orchestrate themselves and adapt. And if you can get yourselves to adapt in those first 10-15 minutes, then it's going to be a difficult shift for both teams, and a little bit easier for you guys. But it'll be a very interesting one to see how well the midfield battle goes, for sure.
Yeah, always a key area. It's going to be interesting to see how the likes of Bruno and Joe Linton, who've been over in Korea on international duty for Brazil, I mean, are they okay? It's a long travel, isn't it? Good old international breaks. But you mentioned it there, a bit of a weakness. What is the one weakness above all else you think Eddie Howe would be exploiting?
I've been thinking about it. Depends who we play. It really does who we play in the back four, because we've unfortunately been prone to a few mistakes here and there, and I'm really sad to say it, just because I love the guy to pieces, and I will die on the hill to say he should have been in the England setup for years and years ago, and that's Lewis Dunk. Dunky hasn't been at the races for best part of a season now, and I think when you've got a striker like you guys, I'm not going to try and pronounce it because I know I'll butcher it. Who is just seems to be banging in the goals. He's just taking it like a Dr. Walter at the moment. He's going to come back full of confidence after scoring for Germany, Northern Ireland. So I just think that's going to be our main weakness. I think set piece wise, we're going to be weak at, because I just don't think Van Hecker and Dunk will have the answers they need to really silence your main man. I think we've got everything at our disposal to make him quiet during open play. But if that cross comes in or if that set play happens, we're in trouble. And I think that's where Eddie Howe could well win it for you guys this weekend, is through the set pieces, because that's always been a bit of an Achilles heel for us in recent years and in recent weeks. So I think the same will go again for this weekend as well. If Eddie Howe doesn't prioritise the set pieces, I will be very, very surprised.
Right, his goals, Nick Woltemade, his goals have come from set pieces or crosses into the box, but don't underestimate the footwork of this guy. I mean, when you see the game on Saturday, you will be taken aback by just how good he is with the ball at his feet. Like, everyone thinks because he's a big giant of a man, it's all about the ball in the box, and it is to a certain degree. But the way he brings the ball down and the skill, like, that's going to be one of the worst things an opposition manager can do, or an opposition defense can do, is kind of focus just on the height, because then you leave him able to bring the ball down. You know, he's got a bit of strength about him, and that's really maybe he's even his key asset despite his height. In terms of a Newcastle United player you're fearing, is it Woltemade or is it somebody else that springs to mind?
I think it's going to be, for me, it's going to be Woltemade, because I just watch him and I just think we don't have an answer for him on height. If we did, it would have been back in the days when Duffy and Dunk were at their peak. But Duffy is, I think he's still struggling to get games at Norwich now. And Dunk, sadly, he just doesn't seem to be as brilliant as he once was, which is, I really hate saying that. But I just feel like with the recruitment we've had in Buscaglia and Coppola, we're definitely investing in the future in defence. And it's sad to say, it's sad for me to admit this, but I think it's just because Dunk is the wrong side of 30 now. And I just think his days are numbered at the Albion. I don't want to hear that, because I hope he, changes his game, adapts it a little bit, and he's, that fantastic defender we all know and love. I just can't see it happen, because he's had a few mistakes last season. He's had, I think, and Van Heck has been prone to an error as well. I just think that's just a great opportunity for Woltemade to just absolutely have free reign. And if he's in control over those two are just going to be chasing the game for the next however long, for the rest of the 90 minutes. And I just don't think we will have an answer to him. If Woltemade has the upper hand very early on, we're going to be in for a very, very frustrating shift.
Fingers crossed he does, and fingers crossed you are. I'm going to ask you for your score prediction in a moment. Just a reminder to you guys watching and listening, this episode is sponsored by NordVPN. You can click the link in the description box to get an exclusive discounted offer on your plan. Prices start from just £2.30. You're supporting the podcast and keeping yourself nice and secure while online, especially while on public Wi-Fi, on the train, in a cafe, in a restaurant. NordVPN offers that added extra element of security. One subscription, 10 devices. Click that link and get signed up. The prediction's going to be interesting, because you're right. Usually, Tom, this game is entertaining. There's goals in it. But Newcastle United this season have been really good at the back. And as I mentioned earlier, 0-0s for the first 3 away games of this campaign. I think that may well happen again in terms of them not conceding. Will they score a goal? Will it be another 0-0 draw? There's a strong possibility. They just don't seem to have clicked yet on the road. And I think if you offer a 0-0 draw right now to a Newcastle fan going down to the Amex, they would take it. it's just frustrating for me that this game didn't come straight after the Forest game that we won, because they went to Belgium, they beat Union SG, then went in that Forest game, won that one, and I would love to have gone down to the Amex within 6 or 7 days. Having a 2-week break, it kind of kills that momentum. That being said, Gordon's scored in international duty, Waldemar is scoring in international duty, so hopefully that keeps a bit of the momentum going. My heart says a Newcastle United win. My head says potentially a draw, maybe even another 0-0. I'm going to go for it's 0-0. That's record. That's a record broken. You have to go back to 1935 or something in Notts County for a fourth 0-0 draw in consecutive games away from home. But I feel like a draw is probably the right result. So I'll go 0-0 and record and a new record set by Eddie Howe. How about yourself?
I'm going to go for draw as well, but I'm going to go both teams to score, so 1-1 draw, I think.
Well, look, I mean, it's not ideal because you always want to win, but if you can't win, you certainly take a point, and it's not the worst footing to take back to St James's Park at all. Tom, thank you as always for providing the insight into Brighton. To you guys watching and listening, thank you for joining us. Do hit thumbs up, do hit subscribe on YouTube, do get into the comments, and I'll get back to each and every single one of you. If you listen on the audio only channel, do leave us a rating and review, and I'll be back on Monday with the Monday show, hopefully celebrating all 3 points for Newcastle United.